Was goal scoring always your prowess? I mean, we talked to a lot of players on this podcast who Wendell Clark, Doug Gilmour, who kind of had to change their game quite a bit once they got into the league. Doug Gilmour famously, they said, if you can check, if you can play, and he had to go from a goal scorer to more of a checker. When you finally entered into the pros, was there anything about your game that had to change accordingly?
I don't know if you read the book, but definitely after my junior, when I got drafted, I had a golf tournament. I was sitting with Dave Hutchison, great man, played in Chicago, Toronto, and all that. And we're sitting there, and I said, Hutch, I says, you played 2 years in NHL. What do you got to do to survive and all that kind of stuff? And the funniest thing came out, I said, Denny, you can score goals, you can make plays, you can do all that kind of stuff, but you got to be a prick. And I went, well, what do you mean? In which way? He says, you got to hit guys. You got to, no matter who they are, you got to get yourself some space. If you got to fight, you got to fight. If you got to spear, you got to spear. If you got to crash check, you got to do all that. That was all part of the game at that time, right? And I go, well, okay. But he said, you still got to do your job. You still got to make plays. You still got to score goals. But you got to create a different outlook of who you are. So that's what I did when I went to training camp. That's exactly what I did. And they still didn't offer me a contract. And so I had an exhibition game against Los Angeles Kings. And I had scored a couple goals, and I was the first star. And I played against Marcel a lot that game. And the GM tapped me on the shoulder and said, call your agent, which was at that time Boom Boom Jeffrey, and tell him to come. We're going to sign a contract when you get back to Oakland.
You were also drafted by the Cleveland Crusaders in 1975 as well, right? What was your decision to go for the Golden Seals over another league?
Well, every Toronto boy or anybody wants to play in the National Hockey League.
Right.
It was kind of a cute little story I got with that because I played lacrosse, and I was a goalie in lacrosse. And I was really going to play for the Montreal pro team in lacrosse as goalie. And because I didn't know anything about what was going to happen with the NHL or where I was going to get drafted. And I really enjoyed lacrosse. I was a goalie. I had a lot of fun with it.
Wow.
But I ended up
not going to get 60 goals a season playing goalie, but maybe you'll let in 60 goals. Who knows?
I did score a bunch of goals as a goalie because there was no
really?
offsides. I just delayed penalty, run down, stand in front of their net, and they'd pass it to me, and I'd try and score.
That's amazing. I love that.
It's kind of interesting, but yeah, that's the way it was. And the Crusaders was world hockey, and my dream was to play as a kid growing up watching Toronto Maple Leafs Hockey Night in Canada and all that. I wanted to play in the NHL. That was my path. That's where I wanted to go. And I got drafted by a team that was not real strong, so I was able to make the team the first year. And I think that's where, if I'd have been drafted by Montreal or Boston or someone else that are real strong, I might have been in the minors the first year or two. But I'm sure that if I would how I worked and how things went, that I would have probably made it.
Well, let me ask you one question, because so many times I hear this. Players that have been started in lacrosse.
Right.
And John Tavares was great at lacrosse. There's so many players that played lacrosse. Now, it wasn't as much of a mainstream sport with me when I was growing up, and I was kind of in the same age group as you. But we didn't have the opportunity as much. But is there a relationship between playing lacrosse and playing hockey? Like, guys, is it the hands? Is it coordination? Does lacrosse help you specifically in your hockey, you think?
Definitely. I think there's a lot of sports that can help in hockey, but I think lacrosse gave you your one thing was because it was a conditioning sport too. It was excellent. You're running all the time. Your eye puck contact, your read and react, your quickness. It created all that, and that definitely would help. And go down the list of guys that played in the NHL that were lacrosse players, as you mentioned, a few of them.
I think even Wayne played lacrosse.
You go down the list of guys, Brendan Shanahan, all these guys that were great players in the NHL, and they go, well, they were great lacrosse players. Adam Oates played with my younger brother in Toronto for Rexdale Warriors, and he was just smaller than everybody else, but he was one of the best lacrosse players.
Were there any NHL players that you played lacrosse with? Like, who was the best NHL player you've played lacrosse with?
Play lacrosse with?
You can say yourself if you want. If you want to say yourself, you can do so.
No, I was a goalie. There's another guy that played lacrosse. He's no longer with us, but Jim Petty. I don't know if you remember. Jim Petty was drafted by the Boston Bruins. He was a goalie, and he played out. And he was a real strong player. Stan Jonathan. We played against. He was up in Peterborough, and he was a tough hockey player, but used to seeing him play lacrosse. He was unbelievable. He could really shoot the ball. So he was one guy that I always looked at guys that were shooters now because I had to stop him. I was a goalie, and he not only was he tough, a little guy, tough playing lacrosse, but boy, he could really shoot that ball. And that was the thing that I noticed a lot of guys is as Brian just mentioned about the connection with the game is, I think it's the speed and the coordination of the hands and timing and all that. Definitely a great game for conditioning.
Thank you so much for watching this clip of the Sign Off, a Frameworth podcast. Just a reminder that we have full episodes of the Sign Off available wherever you get your podcasts, on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Make sure to like and subscribe on whichever platform you use. You can find us on Twitter at Frameworth Sport or on Instagram at Frameworth Sports. And hey, if you're not sick of me yet, you can find me on Twitter at Retrograde Mikey. Finally, feel free to send us emails with your questions you want us to answer on the show, and we may feature you live. You can do that by sending your emails to signoffpod@frameworth.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you with a new episode every single Thursday.